There's no shortcut to the storm.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Hey, go do it.
Okay.
The storm, my storm's different than your storm.
Mm-hmm.
And people tend to think that they're going to be able to avoid the storm. And the only way to kind of go through the storm, and keep pushing. And someone can't tell you when it's going to be over, but it's going to be over. And so if you take that bit of clip of understanding, it'll help tons of entrepreneurs. Because in a moment where that breakthrough, tons, and we see it all the time, either going to college or striving to be something. There's a bunch of people that are quitting in the midst of a storm.
Oh, yeah.
And keep pushing. Everyone's going to go through a storm. This is Patrick Ductant. You're watching Entrepreneur Unleashed.
Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. I'm your host, Edward Collins. And if you've been following me to pretty much any degree, you know that I honestly 100% believe that the best way to shortcut your journey of success is to vicariously learn from others who have been through maybe what you're going through or what you're about to go through and made it through to the other side. And today, I have an amazing guest for you guys. I have Patrick Ductant in the studio. He's going to be sharing his story. I know 100% you're going to get significant value from it. And I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm not going to want you to wait any longer. We're going to just jump right into this conversation. Patrick, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure is definitely mine. This is going to be a lot of fun. Now, so I know a good bit about your story.
Yeah.
Okay, but the audience may not. So what I'd love to do is start off with maybe a 60, 90-second high-level view of who you are now and what you're doing now so that we get some context.
Sure. Well, I'm Patrick Ductant. I mean, one of 10, same dad, same mom.
Okay.
Someone that grew up in Miami. I've been born and raised in the city of Miami.
Okay.
I'm co-founder of Billionaires Row, and it's been a fun journey, fun journey of learning the luxury space, but also spent 10 years with Queen Mary 1 and Queen Mary 2, so that's why I gained that hospitality experience.
Yeah. Well, that experience alone must have been amazing, but I need to share something with you. I'm fifth of 6 kids.
Okay, nice.
But 10, wow.
Yeah.
What was that growing up like?
Honestly, I think it mowed me. I think, obviously having a mom that's definitely a one of 10, but having a mom that's a single parent. I've lost my father at a young age.
Okay.
So for me, it was that one thing that taught me the actual grind and that fire in me. Kind of watching my mom. Just watch 10 kids. Same dad, same mom. So you learn a lot from the tough, the tough grind that she's put in. To make sure that her kids are able to go ahead and see another day.
Wow.
And also too being a foster kid. And I always lead with that because there's foster kids out there that just needs the hope.
Yeah.
And so for me, it kind of spending 7 years away from my mom for 7 years, it taught you a lot, but it also too there's no regret. I do believe that you're dealt cards that you can't take back, and those are cards I was dealt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was the experience, and you just made the best of it.
Yeah.
When you look at that growing up period, did you always know you wanted to become a business owner, or what? Because you obviously didn't go that route in the very beginning. But I'm just curious, because I have this conversation with business owners a lot.
Sure.
I'm just curious where your thought about business ownership started.
No, that's a good question. I think for me it was, and it's probably the first time me saying this, but in corporate, I was in corporate, and I think you in corporate America, you tend to try to climb up the ladders, and there was a higher position, me kind of climbing up the ladders in corporate America, and remember just kind of not getting a certain position that you wanted. And there was a gentleman that was part of the company for about 30 plus years, actually came into my office and said, you're better than this. You're young, you seem to have a bit more of a grit to you. And having that approach for me, it stuck with me. And I remember writing it down, at my office, this is it. And I remember going into my manager's office and giving him my two-week notice. Wow. She was shocked. She was blown back, but for me it was, and end up kind of, trying to go to convince you on more
Yeah,
pay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but my mind was set. And I think that's one thing that makes me a bit different. When my mind's set on something, I'm locked in. I'm 100%. And, just kind of taking that leap of faith. And, we talked about this before. It's also too, you kind of don't know you have it until you're out there. But I do believe that entrepreneurship, it's also this, you got to have it. You got to want it. And I think that for me, I love the challenge. Yeah, definitely love the challenge of it.
Let's walk through the journey of getting there, right?
Yeah.
So you're growing up, you're lots of siblings, a lot of stuff going on. Your mom's amazing. She's like holding it together. You're witnessing that.
Yeah.
Right? You're learning from that experience. What was the next step like you took? Like did you go to university?
No, I was dropout.
Dropout. So tell me about that experience. Like what was that like for you?
Well, going. I mean, for me it was, it's funny because I think once I ended up graduating in high school and then going into, a community college and taking that experience, it was that, I don't know if it was something that just didn't challenge me. It was just something that just wasn't there.
Right.
And, for me it was, and I don't have no squeal about, guys not going to college.
No.
But I knew right then and there college wasn't for me.
Okay.
It was a different path that I wanted to take.
Okay.
And also, too, I think that some of the opportunities in playing sports, I played football and also, too, wrestled. And, you kind of wanted to take those experience on and continue that. But, again, I don't take anything back. I honestly don't take anything back. I think it molded and shaped me to who I am today.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you got out of the environment of higher education,
Yeah.
because you left, like where did you go from there? Like what was the next step?
That's when I ended up going to corporate America,
Okay.
and climbing up there in 10 years, kind of watching myself grow. I'm a numbers guy. I love, just love the challenge when it comes to scalability and being part of that team, I think, but also to learning the luxury side. Because
talk a little bit more about that then. Like what is it that you were doing in corporate that laid the groundwork for you to love this area, this industry?
For sure. I dealt with everything when it came to inventory.
Okay.
Everything that was part of the experience
Of
the consume luxury space of it.
Okay.
So I've seen everything go in and out of these particular lines, Q1 and Q2, which is Queen Mary 1 and Queen Mary 2.
Okay.
But I was able to kind of see it from a level of not being used to. Coming from a humble beginning, coming from where I come from, with the struggles, you're kind of shocked, but working offshore, you're also seeing it from two different views. You're seeing it from when consumers are actually engaging, and one of the things that it always stuck with me is it's that it's a luxury when someone wants to go on there want to go on a voyage. It's not something that they have to go in and book a flight because they have to go up to New York or LA. So for me, it was, it's understanding that from a consumer perspective. And I think that I've learned a lot on how to not only, one, engage with the consumers, but how to keep them loyal. That's a big thing I think companies look for. It's one thing having, consumer, but it's another thing having loyal consumers, at that.
I personally did come from money. So my family, we had to struggle really hard just to get up to the poverty line. I'm curious, like what was your first experience with luxury and wealth in that environment? Like what was that like for you? Like describe it to me.
I think for me, what's to this day, obviously you read it in books, but sleeping in a castle.
Wow.
That's
luxurious. Okay.
Sleeping in the castle for me was that moment. Because you read it in you're in elementary. You talk about castles and stuff like that. But it was an experience that I still talk about to this day. When butlers are coming in the room and you're just being hand and foot or just right there at your beck and call. That was big for me. That was something that it still lives in with me today. But no, that was fun. And I think that kind of, you look at those experiences and, you kind of understand where you come from. There's a part of me that's always going to remain humble no matter how high or low I go. But you also understand the other side. And I think that is somewhere many may never see in their lifetime. And there's just a few selective individuals that are going to be able to experience what luxury truly is. And I'm just happy to definitely have that experience. And it still lives on to this day where I'm able to take that and put that in a business. So.
What would you say was the most instructional experience that you had? What did you learn most from being in that environment?
That's a good one. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that every company strive to try to be the best at whatever they do. But one of the things I've taken from it, it's a system part of it. I'm a system guy.
Okay.
But I think that is what I've taken from corporate.
Okay.
Is learning that if you implement the right system, you can duplicate the system.
Yes.
And I think that, for any entrepreneur that is starting a business or starting a company, it's not only one, creating a great team, but creating a system where your guys are either going to believe in it and your consumers are going to believe in it. And you see to this day, you go into your supermarket, you go into any place that you feel comfortable, you're actually going into a system that makes you and why you tend to kind of go back. Because the coffee tastes the same,
right?
And
you always what aisle has what item in it, et cetera. Yeah.
And I will say this too. The hospitality of it for me, it's understanding how important it is to please and serve your customers. We tend to think that they're going to be here tomorrow, and that's not the case.
Yeah, it's definitely not the case.
It's not the case, and I think that I love being in the business of serving. And I think it's made me look at the company and building a brand and understanding that we're here to serve. And how do we do that? How do we get better every single day on serving our customers, serving our individuals?
Let me run this by you. I had a conversation recently with another business owner, and we were talking about this topic, if you will, of customer relationship and how do you cultivate that.
Right.
And I use the phraseology courtship. And it's like, in any relationship, whether it's a personal relationship or a relationship with customers or even a relationship with teammates, whatever it is,
right.
If you are constantly in a state of courtship, you retain that relationship.
Yep.
It's when the courtship fades that the relationship suffers.
That's so true.
Isn't that true?
That is so true.
Right? Think about it, in personal relationships.
That is so true.
If you stop dating, even if you've been married for 50 years, you stop dating, that relationship tends to suffer a bit. And the same concept happens when you're dealing with your customers. So in the luxury space, that courtship is it the same as typical retail environment, or is it luxurious courtship? Help me to better understand that.
I think it's to this day you kind of find yourself just in that realm. I think everyone strive to get there.
Okay.
So you're not only dealing with someone that's willing to kind of get there, but to your point, I do think that there's, especially in today's world, where you're seeing companies that are having to constantly change their identity to continue that courtship, to continue to gain that. That strive on why am I keep coming back and why is this fun to me? But also, too, I think that there's a foundation in luxury that regardless of what you kind of see in different great companies that have been around for 50, 100 plus years and why they're still around, there's, even when you talk in Europe, there's just a way of luxury of how it's presented. And I don't think that you lose that foundation.
Right.
But now you kind of have to implement the traditional way of luxury, but where the future's going. And the future's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's the evolution of the deliverable,
it's,
right?
It's unreal, I think. And then also, too, what you're seeing today, Edward, is you're seeing companies that would normally take 3 to 6 years to kind of change with the tradition, change with the trend.
Yeah.
They're changing quicker now.
Yes.
Yeah, you're either getting on these different apps or you're behind, because the younger generation are the new consumers. These are the guys that are buying. And I had a great guy that used to work at Rolls-Royce when Rolls-Royce came out with the black badge.
Yes, I remember.
Their typical clientels were your gentleman that was anywhere between 40 and your 6-year-old.
Yes.
When they created the black badge, it was to directly focus on the younger demographic, and I don't think they've turned that table yet. Now they're truly focused on the younger demographic.
That's where all the advertising dollars.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
But they've continued to keep that tradition of who they are, and that's hard.
It is.
Yeah. So
it is. Now you obviously you got your start in the corporate environment with regard to luxury, but that came to a head.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity for you to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
And you did. What was the next step?
Well, real estate. I got into it. I've been with my, I would say, lovely wife for 9 years, but we've been together for 15 years.
Okay.
But I think leaving corporate, it was, finally, selling our first property.
Okay.
And for me, it was that opportunity to have enough cushion to take that leap of faith. And, obviously you kind of have to have that gut to just kind of take that leap.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. And that's when the transition ended up having for me to kind of become the co-founder of Billionaires Row today.
And when you look at Billionaires Row, describe what that is. Help the audience understand what that really means.
Well, Billionaires Row is a luxury lifestyle company. I think one of the things for us, if you was to look online, obviously we are a company that have a champagne, an XO, and alkaline spring water. But more to that, I think it's one of those companies that, for us, it's an experience. And I tell the actual team today, we don't sell the product, we sell the experience.
Okay.
The product comes with that.
Okay.
And if we're great at selling the experience, we're going to be able to execute it night in and night out. And I think, if you're seeing what's happening, pre-COVID, to where it's at today, I think for us, it's to keep at it. And how do we create the experience where guys are going to come, and that's what you're seeing with these high-end restaurants. You can't just go in there and sell steak anymore.
Yeah.
You got to sell the bells and whistles that come with it.
Guy throws.
Yeah.
Right.
and that's the experience.
Yeah. Exactly.
I do believe that every great company have two things in common. It's great customer service and great customer experience. And if you're able to implement those two things in any company, you're on the right track. Right track for greatness. And it's a challenge. You work at it. You continue to work at it. You go back to the drawing board, and I think one of the biggest things for us, it's the misconception of what it truly is. If you go on, it's a spirit company, and I think I go to the team and I say, guys, if someone goes Billionaires Row is a spirit company, and that's a problem for us,
right?
Because we're more than that. That's leaving this particular SKU out. That's leaving this experience out. When someone, what you want and hope to happen, and that comes around with a great team, is you hope and wish to get down to a position where you are a luxury company, which they know to have great experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say, if you were to describe, your, not necessarily average, but what a typical customer experience with your company would look like? If you were to tell that through the eyes of the customer, what would that be?
I'm just doing different events. I think it's also to one of the things I think that's important for us if we're talking consumers, it's identifying who you are. And I think that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to really truly identifying who these new consumers are. And I think that a lot of companies are kind of going through those challenges now to kind of truly understand who's your direct consumer. For us, the age group was anywhere between 18 to 35 if it's outside of the States, and 21 to your 35 as far as your direct consumers that you want to make sure that you're targeting, because those are the new buyers.
Right. How did you go about making a lot of these decisions? Because obviously you had corporate experience.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between corporate experience and running your own business. How did you learn that?
That's for me. I get this. I say this to the team. There's a fire that burns in me.
Okay.
Yeah, I can close a big opportunity, and I just don't get excited. I say, guys, if we celebrate less and get on to the next one, bigger, small.
Yes.
That's the fire. For me, I find challenge when guys tell me I can't do something.
Okay.
that's like when someone's kind of pat me on the back and says, "You did a great job."
Okay.
I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. I get this fire when a guy goes, "You can't close that." I go, "Oh man,
you have no idea.
You have no idea." I think I needed that one. So for me, it's that's when I get excited because I've proven so many individuals wrong. But that comes with a great team.
That's a key point too. Yeah. Like, how did you develop your team? Like, what was the process like for you? It started with just you at this point, right? You creating this new company with a partner, you're building this enterprise. Like, how did you go about like making hiring decisions? Like,
well, that's a good one. I think for us, it's forever growing. I think now we're at a point where we're resetting, kind of reshaping who we are. Obviously, there's a lot of transition things that are happening behind the scenes. But to answer your question, as far as when it comes to the team, and I'll say this one because Jack just sent me a book, who's been part of our team, since the beginning, and he's been in the spirit space for 16 plus years. Someone that worked with Ace of Spade, someone that's worked in the spirit space that I've learned a lot from. Because it's one of those things where it's forever learning. You have to be
a student of life and business, right?
But he was on the opposite side.
Okay.
He was on the opposite side. We hired an actual company, and they were a sales team, and I get a kick out of sales. And obviously the CEO of the company, at the time was giving us excuses on why he can't close opportunities, and one of them was Total Wine. And for me, I said, you walk these, and I'd say this to any entrepreneur: if you feel it in your heart that you can do it, don't have anyone tell you can't.
I love that.
Yeah. Like this individual, pretty much his father wrote the bylaws of these box office retailers.
Wow. Okay.
And he said to me, it's not the way you get into a Total Wine. I said, no, I don't know. I think that we're a company that's different. We come with a bit of an edge. And it just sparked something into me that I go, no, I think we could do it. Here's how we could do it. And just here's how we could approach it. And Jack's seen it, and that's how he ended up saying to myself, and whatever happened in their situation, he ended up coming to work for us. Okay. And he said he loved the fire. And for me, that's what I love, guys that have chips on their shoulders. Okay. So if you're looking to create a team, I'm looking for not the big degree. You're looking for guys that are just like, I got a chip on my shoulder. I got something to prove. And I'm like, all right, get on the bus. Let's go. So, but it's creating a team that you also can learn from.
Yes.
And for me, it's being a team player. I think I've learned that, and in my high school days of having a coach who was not one our football coach, but also to our wrestling coach. And Coach Phillip, that's his name. Playing football, it's 11 on 11 guys on the field. Going and transitioning to wrestling, it's an individual sport, but you have to have something in you to be different. And he's seen something in me, and it was different. And I say this to say, in wrestling, I think it taught me discipline. Okay. That I didn't see in football.
Interesting.
And to see it in what these guys are doing, like the Mark Zuckerberg and why he's taking MMA, I see it different than the world sees it. Okay. The world sees it as this guy's just trying to get fit. Now, there's a discipline that comes with MMA, boxing, wrestling.
One-on-one competition, right?
Reason why I say that, at 14, I'm wrestling. You get guys that are high school kids that are 14. You got to make weight on Friday. You either have a choice to eat honey buns with your friends and cookies the size of both of our heads and dip it in milk.
Hey, I was young.
Or be disciplined to make weight and have the consistency of doing it. And so I give those guys that most respect. But what it taught me, and fast forward to where I'm at today, is that fire also taught me discipline. And that's where I've learned it. Although we're going to go through the storm, there's a part of you that have to be disciplined. And you have to understand that storm's going to pass. But are you going to give up? Are you going to take the shortcut? Because in wrestling, MMA, these different sports, you can tell them that I'm cutting weight and I'm doing everything. But when you jump on that scale,
It doesn't lie.
It doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So I think it reminds me to not cheat myself
Okay.
as an entrepreneur. It's that if we're going to go through the storm, it's going to happen. Companies are going to go through a bit of a shift of what's happening. And going back to the whole Mark Zuckerberg situation, 6-7 months ago, they were asking for this guy to step down.
Right.
Metaverse didn't work.
Yep.
This happened. But for any entrepreneur to look at someone coming for your head and saying that Facebook was cool, but what's this?
It's done.
You got to dial in. And I think that's why I look at that and him training now. I said he's not just training to fight Elon Musk. He's training this inner person. And I've learned that at 14, and I'm so happy that I've having that experience because I do think that it lives on to my adult life and where I'm at today.
Well, I think if you're gonna develop a particular characteristic in yourself, discipline is definitely the one you want, right? Because it makes certain that you do the necessary things regardless of how you feel, and if you do the necessary things, you get the product or the outcome that you desire, right? It's not always smooth, it's not always comfortable, but it results. When you look at the results that you started to get applying discipline in the business as you were growing it, was it an immediate success? Like, what was that evolution like?
I think you go through momentums, but there's also challenges that you face if two individuals that are part of the company at the top are not seeing the same direction or the same vision. I think that's where you have to kind of take a step back, and for it's how fast can you identify that? Because there's a momentum that I strongly believe that momentum exists, and sports and business, and having the momentum, and when that momentum is gone, you got to look at the top, and it starts with the two guys up top, and for me, taking a step back, regrouping, looking at the team, allowing them to stay focused on what's at task, how we're going to get through this storm, how we're going to adjust, not only in a luxury space, but we're competing with companies that have been around for 50, 100 plus years.
Right.
How do you position yourself where it is not a overnight success and it's all over? How do you position yourself with the foundation, the right system, the right team, and also to challenge yourself for when the storm does come, that you can understand that mistakes are going to happen.
Right.
And I think that I've learned a lot in those last 4 or 5 years of just understanding that. And I think that it's now reshaping and getting back to what's the true identity. And so to really, I think that people like to talk about the glory days of entrepreneurship. I've done this, but I do believe to really give it to an entrepreneur, your darkest moments where you find the answer. Yeah, not when the champagne's on ice.
No, definitely not.
No, you're finding the answers at your darkest moments, because it's going to truly tell you who you are. If you're up for it, and I think that for me, I'm definitely up for it. I love it.
I love
so,
it. When you look at that evolution, then obviously, because it's relatively speaking, it did happen quickly.
Yeah.
What was the biggest impediment that you had to get through in order to be where you are now?
That's a good one. I think it's going through individuals that are either not buying in.
Okay.
And
let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's important, because that does happen a lot, especially in enterprises that are growing.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by not buying in? Like, help me understand
I think the quicker you're able to identify someone that just doesn't have it, it not only save you time, but you'll be able to continue the momentum. But I think if you allow it to linger around, and that can be anyone on your team.
Yes.
I think as entrepreneurs, you have to, and I'm guilty of it as well too. You can really love that this person's a great person, and my wife, and but there's a point where you got to go. if you got it or you don't, and this is not for you.
Yeah.
And moving on and making those transitions.
And that is so hard
It's
for
tough.
so many business owners to do.
It is so
right?
tough.
I'm a stoic, so I try not to invest a lot of energy in things that are outside of my control, and I try to put as much energy as I can into things that are.
Right.
And when it comes to hiring and firing decisions, that is a whole can of worms for a lot of business owners, right? The approach that I tend to take is more in line, like I try to like think of myself almost like a coach, right, on a professional team. And the job of the coach is twofold. Your job is to take a look at the player,
Yep.
see where their challenges are, and then try to coach them up.
Right.
That's your responsibility. That's the whole part of being a coach. But if they are not coachable and they are not elevating their skill sets, then your second job is to coach them out.
Yep.
Because that's not the right place for them.
That is so
right?
true.
And you said it just now, like it's not the right place for you. And you need to help them know that sometimes. And it's extremely uncomfortable for so many. Because it's like so negative.
Yeah, you're so right.
But if you think about it, it's actually positive.
Yeah.
Because you're actually helping them to find out that this is not the place for
Correct.
them to flourish.
Correct.
You want them to find the place to flourish, it's just not in your environment.
Correct.
Don't get me wrong. I'm going to get a ton of hate for that phraseology, but it's true.
It's so true.
It
No,
really
it's
is.
so true.
As a business owner, you're in job. Your job is to be in business, right?
Yeah.
It's not a non-profit entity,
Right.
It's a for-profit entity,
Right.
Therefore, your goal was to win the championship
Yep.
every time the
Yep.
championship was around, right?
Yep.
And if you have B players and C players or D players,
Yep.
like you can't win a championship.
You can't.
It's just not possible. So you have to you have to make that investment of time, effort, and energy, and be willing to be uncomfortable.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's probably a characteristic of most really successful. I really don't like the word successful but let me phrase it this way. For those entrepreneurs that have achieved milestones of success that most would recognize.
Right.
Like most of the time that's in the terms of the type of company they have
Correct.
or the type of resources they have access to or the revenue that they generate. Whatever the milestone is, I find that most of the time the distinguishing characteristic is their willingness to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you willing to be uncomfortable?
I had to learn that. You know, I think to your point, it's a hard thing. You know, it's because
Yeah.
you're spending time with individuals. But I do believe that there's a part where the most successful individuals that you and I probably have Googled or know are guys that don't have emotions.
Yeah.
They're,
At least they don't show them.
I mean, they're just, you know, if it didn't work, I'm sorry, you got to
Next.
go
Yeah.
next. You know, I'm here to win the champion.
100%.
You know, and you see it in sports.
Oh gosh, yes.
I mean, if you, just to be a sport owner, I mean, you got to have it where just 2 years ago, you were like, this is my guy, it's 5 years on a contract.
100%.
Oh, it didn't
To
work?
buy
You got to go. It's
Yeah.
out. And so having that mentality and working on instilling it when to coach someone out, I think it's something I've been really kind of getting it together and really understanding when it's the perfect time to go, no, this is just not going to work. Yeah, we're going in two different directions. And I think that it definitely saves you time and it puts the company in a better position. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about the company. And if you go, this is what's best for the company, opposed to what's best for me, it's putting the company in a better position.
When you look at that then, if you're trying to put your company in a better position,
Yeah.
I'm speaking for you,
Yeah.
like where do you see yourself going over the course of the next 2 to 5 years with the company? Like what's on the horizon then?
That's I think having to identify not only coaching guys out, but finding great individuals that had experience in the luxury or had experience in different fields that you not only can sell on a vision, but learn from.
Okay.
And being willing for myself is I'm open to being challenged. That if we're going, here's what we are planning for Q3, Q4, you know, let's put it on the table. And a guy comes in and goes, no, I don't think that's going to work. Here's why, X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
I think I love that approach opposed to a guy to say, I just don't want to do that. I don't think that's going to work. I do believe that great teams are teams to explain the whys and why this is not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. It gives the foundation an open room for us to make mistakes.
Right.
Where guys, because I think what do you find in companies, if you're not addressing the morale, you're done.
Absolutely, 100% with that.
And so having to control the morale, putting aside the ego, addressing it from a perspective to say that we're doing this what's best for the company, it allows everyone to come into this table and go, here's my idea. I don't care if you're a CFO. I don't care if you're X. Now we're going, this is what's best for the company. And I do believe that you give someone a voice of understanding that if it does work, it wasn't my idea.
Exactly.
It was your idea. And we all figured out how to make this work. And that's a success. And so finding those things and learning those things, and for me, it's hiring a business coach, and having those advisories around you as an entrepreneur are very key because, you find yourself scratching your head going home.
It's hard to see the forest through the trees,
my
right?
God.
That's the whole nature of having a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge difference between ownership and leadership, right? So in the leadership struggle, your job is to figure out how not only to motivate, generally inspire, but also to educate and then refine the skill sets of those on your team and understand how those skill sets are complementary to one another, right? You can't have all A players in this particular zone of genius,
1,000%.
right? They have to be complementary, otherwise you end up steering only in that direction. And a really well run and led enterprise requires your ability to see that. How did you learn how to see it?
That's a good one, Edward. I think I've always been the guy that, regardless if I'm walking a red carpet, man, I'm rolling my sleeves. I'm going to the warehouse.
Okay.
I'm grinding with these guys.
Okay.
And I think if you're an owner of a company, if they see that you're grinding with them, that's that little bit. And then also showing appreciation. That trickles down to the guys that are at the lower tier that now have the hope of understanding that we're going to war together. And I'm in this with you guys. And again, the bottles can be on ice, the pitchers can be flashing. That's cool. But the actual kitchen and the guys that are cutting it up, the guys that are bringing the steak, they want to be a part of that experience of that waitress bringing that steak they filleted in the back.
Exactly.
And so kind of bringing it from that perspective, I think when you find that, everyone's buying that. From the stew chef, everyone's buying in this system, but it starts from the top. And if you're able to go ahead and lead those guys by example and going, I've closed this opportunity. I'm in the warehouse. I'm doing this. I'm willing to do that. They're now buying that. And they're happy. They're excited. They're fired with you. Guys, we're going through a storm. We're going to get through this. And there's been times, I get on Zoom calls and I'll tell you, Edward, you got to leave the what's happening in life and then kind of get on a Zoom call and snap out of it.
100%.
Because if, the moment you show that there's concern or there's a bit of a weakness to anything, they start to doubt the vision. And
doubt is very contagious.
And that's when it becomes a problem. I don't think we still have it.
Interesting. So what's on the next step for you guys? Like what are you doing next? Like what's the growth trajectory like, and what's on the horizon of what you want to do?
I think with all the transition, I think one of the biggest things for me, key thing, would be to put ourselves next to the big guys.
Okay.
And learning from, the top luxury companies that have proven themselves for 50 years.
Okay.
But finding the edge of why we're different. And I think we're still in the quest of that.
Wow.
Why we're different. Although we're selling the experience, there's an open that I see. And for me, I'm a strong believer in that you're on this earth and I'm a frequency guy.
Okay.
I believe that the universe only has one mind, and guys are tapped into certain frequency.
Interesting.
And I believe an individual like Elon Musk, you call him crazy until he's taken spaceships into Mars.
Yeah.
But it's not like it hasn't been done. It's that frequency he's tapped into. I'm trying to tap into the frequency. So there's a borderline of when you start understanding yourself and understanding conscious of why you're doing what you're doing, you're getting into a different realm.
Okay.
You're getting into a different vibration to go. If you're starting a brand and you're building a company, also understand that it's a mental aspect to it that we don't speak about.
Yeah.
Guys
we live in that Instagram. Everything's like finely curated.
No, I can't do it, and I don't know. I look at, I think that the greatest thing to do as a young entrepreneur, just entrepreneur period, it's if you find someone that you admire, they're tapped into something. It's like tapping into a Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
If you're able to tap into that frequency, you're just that close to getting that breakthrough, because they were in the same. Jeff Bezos was in the same, and now he's cracked it and he's who he is today. But understanding that everyone has that start story, and we tend to forget it because it's been so long to see a person like Mark Zuckerberg or your Elon Musk or your Jeff Bezos that they were grinding.
Exactly.
No
one remembers.
No one remembers. They don't.
Of Jeff Bezos in his little office with his desk and his messed up hair, and like
he's seen something,
right?
So I try to just keep that into that vibration and that frequency intact to go. Even though the world doesn't see it, you're seeing something the world doesn't see yet.
Exactly.
And eventually, that breakthrough is going to happen. And so for me, going through the transition that we're on, and to answer your question as far as what's on the horizon, I think the future is going to be bright.
Okay.
Yeah, and I say it from a perspective of kind of you got to go through changes. You got to go through tough times and go through the storm. And again, for me, I've learned that you do find the answers in the darkest place.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, every guest I have on this show, I go through this mental exercise with them, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to take you down this journey.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love you to imagine for a moment that you have the ability to go back in time, and you can visit with a younger version of Patrick, and you get to share one piece of practical wisdom with Patrick, the younger version of you.
Yeah.
Who do you go back to visit, meaning what age, what was going on in life, and what do you share?
That's a good one. I said at 18.
18? Okay.
Yeah. I think 18 is when I started to kind of feel like an adult.
Okay.
But I would tell my 18-year-old self, you can't change anyone. You can't change certain circumstances that you want. The only control that you have is yourself.
100%.
And I'm 36, but if I had had that bit of information, I think I'd be further in life. So it's to answer
Wasted
that,
energy,
yeah,
right?
right? Wasting energy, that you can only control yourself. So I would have told my 18-year-old self, control what you can control. Don't control everything you can't.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's a second portion to this exercise, though, because I do want you to imagine for a moment that the future version of Patrick has come back in time to this moment and is going to share a piece of practical wisdom with you. What does he share?
I'm that's for me, that one gets me goosebumps because I'm excited about the universe. That everything that we believe to be existence happened already.
Wow.
That the past, present, and future all exist at once.
Wow, that's super deep.
Yeah. what you can process and what you've thought of happened already.
Wow.
You haven't gotten there yet.
Interesting.
And I believe that the futures of what we see, what's happening today with flying cars and thing, I believe that even back then in ancient time, it happened already. We're just now getting up to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so the future,
I love it.
the future exists all in once. The past, present, and future all exist. And that's where my mind is.
Okay.
I had a top lawyer tell me, he's like, what is it, that one thing that you're going to get excited about? I said, I want to be the first luxury company to get to Mars. He said, you're crazy.
I
said,
that.
No,
you have no clue.
You go, why? I go, we've been there already.
I
just want to put a flag on there. I go, you got to hit the reset button, Louis Vuitton. But that's one thing that excites me. Okay. Yeah, so that was a good one because I am a universe mindset guy. I love the universe. I love everything about it.
So the younger version of Patrick has gotten some practical wisdom.
Yeah.
The present version of Patrick has gotten some practical wisdom. I don't want the audience to feel left out.
Okay.
So what's one piece of practical wisdom you would share with anyone who's consuming this content right now? Like one piece of practical wisdom that could move the needle.
There's no shortcut to the storm.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Hey, go do it.
Okay.
The storm, my storm's different than your storm. And people tend to think that they're going to be able to avoid the storm. And the only way to kind of go through the storm, you know, and keep pushing. And someone can't tell you when it's going to be over, but it's going to be over. And so if you take that bit of clip of understanding, it'll help tons of entrepreneurs. Because in the moment where that breakthrough, tons, and we see it all the time, either going to college or striving to be something. There's a bunch of people that are quitting in the midst of a storm.
Oh, yeah.
And keep pushing. Everyone's going to go through a storm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Patrick, I really appreciate you sharing so authentically today. I know the
sure.
audience would definitely want to make sure that they reach out to you directly. So what's the best way, like if they had interest in learning more about what you're doing, how you're doing it?
Yeah, for sure.
Like how should they do that?
Yeah, definitely. My Instagram, I'm one of those individuals that love if someone's sending me a message on Instagram.
Okay.
I tend to respond. If I can't get to it, I'm gonna get to it, and I'm definitely gonna respond. I'm always gonna continue to have that humbleness in me, and that comes from my mom, and just continue to give any word of advice. So they can definitely reach me on social media for sure.
Wonderful. I'll make sure that that's included in the show notes. But Patrick, thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
For
Thank
sharing
you.
authentically and being who you are.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I love this conversation. And for all of you who have consumed this, I know it has been phenomenal. This has been another amazing episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. My name is Edward Collins. Patrick Ductant here in the studio making major bombs that he's dropping, just telling you about his life and his experience. I know you've loved it. Be sure to watch the next episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. Can't wait to see you there. Bye for now. Patrick, that was awesome.
Oh,
man.
thank you.